committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, September 10th. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk. Alderman Tulaco. Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Alderman Bach.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Bratt.
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Here.
And Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, we have approval of the minutes from August 14th.
Move approval. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion, comments, questions? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those minutes are approved. Next up, we have our only discussion item of the evening, discussion on the community survey. And Alderman Meyer is going to say a few words to kick us off, and then we'll hand it over to Carrie and Justin.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take a brief second aside, though. I want to thank Carrie and Justin for all the hard work they put in so far into this. We've got a lot to go, but we still have a long ways to go if this gets approved tonight by the Common Council. I'm not going to go into the history of the city surveys and that, because that's what they will be doing tonight and getting you up to date and everything. But just want to remind the Common Council that a lot of our past policy and budgetary discussions have been made because of residential sentiment projected by our past community surveys. Public Welfare Committee believes that we have the right company to assist us with this, with the survey and the plan for gathering the information from our residents that we have is the best approach. If approved tonight, Public Welfare looks forward to continue to move forward on the survey, formalize the questions with all parties, including the Common Council, and then after the survey replies, distribute all the results.
Thank you. All right, with that, take it away, Justin or Carrie. I'm not sure who's going to lead off.
Yeah, I'll take the first go. So the city of Mequon has a 3-decade history of doing community surveys to gauge public feedback on a number of fronts. A little history: the first 2 were conducted in connection with blue ribbon visioning committees that were set up by the Common Council at the respective times to gauge feedback on a number of points. And both surveys enjoyed high response rates, 52%, 40% response rate, respectively. Those are fantastic response rates, and just shows that we have a community that really enjoys and is willing to give their feedback to the city on these types of surveys. The most recent 2 in 2012, the torch was picked up by the Public Welfare Committee at that time, and they used the UW Center of Urban Initiatives and Research. That center is no longer around. It's gone, and that survey focused on largely development, so included information about businesses, types of businesses residents want to see in Mequon. It touched on housing, single, are you okay with multifamily, what type of multifamily, apartments, condos, senior living, and such. And then also touched on broader aspects such as I-43, and in particular the Highland Road interchange that's now coming to fruition was in that survey too. So that survey, again, was done by Public Welfare, and the Public Welfare continued to do the spade work. And then for the 2019 survey, with the UW Center no longer around, we found a new vendor for the 2019 survey, which actually had a couple of the staff members from UW system in their ranks. So we worked with St. Norbert College and Neighborhood Analytics to conduct that survey, and it was roughly a year, little over process from beginning to end, from contracting and finding the consultant, developing questions, going to the community, and then the consultant coming on site to present the results of the survey, which touched on everything from development, open space preservation, economic development, city services, satisfaction with city services, civic campus, and the community pool and parks. So it was a broad type of survey that got a lot of feedback, and again enjoyed a high response rate of 40%. In talking with consultants for this go around, some of them are astonished that we have a community that generates such high response rates. So I think we have a good opportunity to get an equal response in our upcoming survey that hopefully will tie in with the strategic plan.
So this brings us to the 2025 survey that the Public Welfare Committee has been working on since the beginning of the year. And So at the council meeting tonight, you will be voting on the vendor that they selected that will help us move forward in this process. But before we start, we want to ask a few questions that are going to help us formulate the survey instrument. So we have 5 questions listed up on the screen for you that we are hoping to get your feedback on this evening. So we'll start with the first 2 questions. What is the purpose of the survey, and what does the council wish to learn? As we talked about this at the end of 2023 at the Committee of the Whole, the consensus was to align the next survey with the strategic plan update that we're going to do in 2025. So just for a reference, the 2019 topic areas were economic development, preservation, satisfaction with city services, the civic campus, community pool, parks and pathways. So if we did line this up with the strategic plan, those current 5 focus areas are capital improvements, public safety, financial stewardship, and customer service and quality of life. So we'd like to hear back from you as to what you are wishing to learn in this next survey.
Don't everyone jump at the chance to raise their hand. Alderman Gebhardt.
I'll kick things off. I may be thinking of this in a little different terms than maybe some of my peers. But really, I think for what's important for me is gauging how we're doing from a customer satisfaction perspective in the eyes of the residents. Are we providing the right services, both in context of the way we're handling issues to the services we provide as a community and so forth? That would be important for me. The second topic that would be important for me is help understand from a community standpoint how they think of priorities in our community. So what is most important to them? I think that helps set the tone for where we spend our time and how we allocate our time to the different priorities that we address as a council to keep this city as strong as what it is. The piece that I get a little bit concerned with is using it too much to go ahead and guide policy. And I say that because I think that in terms of what different priorities are, sometimes different priorities could be conflicting if we try to drive policy with that. An example of that might be in terms of looking at our historically low tax base and knowing that over the course of time we've got to consider how we're going to go ahead and generate more revenue, and taking away levers that we might have, such as economic development or other levers like that. And I'm not saying I'm advocating one over the other, but I think one of the challenges that we have as an overall board is to continue to think about how we're going to sustain the increased costs that we have to operate this great city and make sure that we have all the levers available to us. And I don't know that the general public necessarily understands the variables. You know, I'm sitting in my role now for about a year and a half, and I tell you there's a lot I didn't know now that I'm sitting where I am here today. And I look at that as being a very important factor for me to be a better member of this committee and make better decisions moving forward, if that makes sense. So I'd be a little concerned in using it too much to drive policy. I think we have to factor it in terms of how we're thinking of priorities.
Alderman Strelchak.
I'll kind of build on that, and I think it's great. The surveys that we've done in the past have been an excellent resource for council, and what we've gained from it is a pulse on really what people desire. And as Alderman Gebhardt mentions, you know, we don't want it to drive policy, but again, some of the feedback that we had was pretty simple. You know, people wanted certain things, and then the second question was they didn't want to pay for it with raised taxes. So we were able to gain a pulse on really what the constituency wanted, right? We're all elected to vote and support our constituency, but they also elect us to do the deeper analysis, as you've mentioned, and really understand the ins and the outs of what happens within the city and make a best educated judgment on how to drive policy for the city moving forward, something that's more sustainable. So I do agree with you. You know, again, really the things that I want to do, and I'll kind of broad brushstroke this is, you know, we did an extensive, since the last survey, you know, town center's grown significantly, right? There's been a ton of development. What's the pulse? You know, people have had a few years to, you know, to see it, get used to it, go to the different venues and experience it. What's the pulse there? How do we like it? The pool is, you know, as I've been like openly blunt about, has been an important issue for me for a very long time. You know, our pool, in my opinion, you know, needs an updating and needs one bad. It has for years. I took swimming lessons in that pool as a child, and really view that as a community resource, and something that I want to continue. So, you know, what is the pulse of what people want to see within a pool? How far do we want to take this? Do we want it to be a simple pool where people can come and just relax and swim, or do we want a full-blown pool that's, you know, closer to a Cedarburg, or even better than a Cedarburg, maybe with a little more extensive water slides and things like that? Development, and we had some questions in the last one as it related to architecture. Architecture on Port Road, there have been a couple buildings that have been approved, heavy glass buildings, that I personally didn't like and voted against. I would love a pulse to see if that remains my opinion, or if my constituency backs and prefers more natural elements, and we did a really good job in crafting that. For the newer aldermen and alder people on the council, I'll highlight to you that the questioning was, asking a question about what you like and what you don't like is a lot harder than we think it is. So as we get into the minutia of where the questions go moving forward, just kind of take a deep breath and realize that you may not get everything that you want out of the question. It's very hard to ask a question without leading with an opinion, or asking a line of questions without leading a certain level of opinion, in doing that. And that was one of my struggles as I reviewed the questions on the last survey. So just know that frustration's coming, and also the excitement of how to, you know, be creative and craft something that still works and really gains the pulse of the constituency. And with that, I'll yield to my fellow council members for their input.
Alderman Hancher.
I guess my main interest would be what would be the viewpoint of people in the community from different age groups, from people that are new in Mequon, that have young families, that are in the middle age group, and people that are older. What do they see as the future of Mequon, and what do they want? That breakdown would be helpful to me, because we have more and more housing coming in, which more and more younger families that would be interesting to see what their viewpoint is and how they want to see the city. And also from the standpoint of people that are older, how do they see themselves in the city, and what do they want? What do they need from the city? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alderman Bach.
Just to comment, and Justin, maybe you can elaborate. We talked about that. I'm on that committee. Both of us are on the committee, so we've shared a bunch during our meeting, so I'll yield my time. But we did talk a little bit about looking at the 2019 survey, and there were a lot of good questions already that were on there. So we might be able to take some of that information, and the committee was going to look at that, so we don't have to recreate the wheel on some of that. And to the point from Alderman Hancher, I think we talked a little bit about the demographic questions too, and that might help get to some of what he's asking about.
Yep, correct. If we carry over the demographics section from the last survey to this survey, it includes age, length of residency, and 5 or 6 other general questions, including which aldermanic district you live in. that allows them, the consultant, to slice and dice all the questions by, whether it's age, family, and whatnot, to give you feedback by those various groups. And also, staff, if we ever do a future analysis, we can crunch numbers too.
I'll make a general comment quickly. Looking at the survey topics from 2019 to now, it's not like they don't map reasonably well to the strategic plan. Each one of those things falls into one of the buckets, many of them on the quality of life side. So it's not like we're in total misalignment. The strategic plan is a little more general in nature, and some of those were very targeted initiatives. So, I mean, some amount of that carrying forward is good. I like the idea of checking, how do we do? We put in town center between, much of town center between now and the last survey. Some of it predated that, but gauge people's reaction to that. I think, as I think Alderman Gebhardt mentioned, gauging customer satisfaction across maybe a variety of city services is also good. That directly aligns with our strategic plan. I think we should take the opportunity to, this next year in 2025, it's in our plan to start working on the plan for the civic campus. We've got some ARPA monies aligned for helping develop that plan. We should maybe use a question or two to figure out what we want in that, what we'd like to see, if we had a blank sheet, including the pool, which was mentioned earlier. And then I think this is maybe a little more policy, but maybe not so much. It's also a longer range, still taking the opportunity to gauge people's feelings on development, residential and economic development. One of the things we're still looking at and doing a sewer analysis for is the Southwest Industrial Park concept. It'd be a shame to have a survey and not gauge some feedback on the prospect of that. Certainly that's something we'll be dealing with in the next couple of years, and if we're going out for a survey, we should gauge people's reaction to that, much like we did with some of the questions in the last survey for other specific ideas. I think Alderman Meyer had his hand up.
Just quickly, what I think a lot of stuff boils down to is the fact of that moving forward, as Alderman Gebhardt said, we have to try to find ways of revenue or other means. And I guess it boils down to the fact of that, I'd like to hear it from the residents, boils down to either development, tax increases, or reduced services. I mean, that's the only way that things happen. I mean, that's going to be happening. So, or some combination of that. So I'd like to get the pulse of the residents on, if it goes the development way, is it residential, is it industrial that they would like to see more inside of it, and what types? Tax increase, are they willing to not see a lot of development inside of there, but have a small tax increase on a yearly basis to sustain stuff and to improve things as it goes along? Or are they looking at, we don't want to do any of that, and we're fine with reducing services? I'm not advocating any of those by any means whatsoever, but it'd be nice to hear from the residents on some of those points to find out if they're leaning in any one of the directions.
There's question one. We can always come back if we have to.
Okay, so the next question is, should benchmark questions be used to compare Mequon to other comparable cities? So you can see an example up on the screen of one such question. And so it shows how the city did versus how their region did, and then how the U.S. did. So when we did select our vendor, we did reference checks with 2 other cities, and they pretty much solely based their vendor selection on the fact that they could do benchmark with other cities. So that does seem to be important to other cities. I don't know if that's important to us, or if we want more Mequon specific questions. Some people do take the benchmark questions and then just maybe do 1 or 2 specific questions to their community. So there's lots of different ways that we can do this. So this is where we did provide you with all the benchmark categories from ETC Institute in your packets. So hopefully you had a chance to take a look at those. And just so you know, we would be compared with the Plains region, and so Wisconsin falls under that region, which also includes North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. So we will leave that open then to you to give any feedback on the benchmark part of question.
Alderman Meyer.
I'll kick this one off then. So at Public Welfare, we did think that some of those questions would be important for us to have. There is a list, probably like about 50 of them on there or more for it. A lot of those don't pertain to anything that we would be looking to get information on. So we did plan on our next meeting kind of paring some of those down and getting that down to a minimum amount of questions. I mean, I don't know whether that's 3, as you said, maybe that's 6 of them or whatever. We've got 30 questions is what we can put on our survey, so the more we add into those types of questions for us, and we'll add them in if it's important to everybody, but the more we add those in, the less questions we get to get the pulse of the city inside of it. So you know, I was kind of thinking, if we had like 6 important ones that make reference to us and we can be comparison to, pretty straightforward to it, we thought that'd be a good thing, but we haven't decided on which ones it would be, and of course that's the purview of the common council to take a look at which ones they would like to get information on. So I know it'd be a quick decision tonight trying to pick those things out, so but we could do something like that next month and get a report back to the common council real quick and just let them know what we kind of picked out.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderman Gebhardt?
Yeah, I like that idea. For me, I wouldn't, this wouldn't be a really important area, but I do think that if you could be a little bit more selective and narrow it down to a couple of areas, there may be some value in that.
Yeah. I was thinking if it was a question that pertained to some other policy or decision you were making and you could help add a little color to that, that might be particularly interesting, but you'd almost, I like the idea of narrowing it down, and then we can have like a slightly bigger list and then see which ones align with other focus areas of the survey that might help us tease out more information somewhere else. I agree. I think it's maybe not a main focus of the survey, but it might be a complementary portion that I wouldn't want to say no to it, but I wouldn't want the whole survey to center around. I'll leave it to the capable hands of the committee to take a first crack at that one. Alderwoman Tlaco.
So I'm just thinking that I would see only the benefit kind of for this as a benchmark of comparing other communities' mill rate compared to Mequon. For instance, we're at $3.11 currently in Mequon, and a quick Google search shows that Cedarburg's at $6.06 per thousand. So that could give residents kind of an idea of how well we use our money, considering our land size, and kind of give them a feel or pulse of what's going on around them versus what's happening here in the community, and also kind of show them how we are taking into consideration every penny and using it wisely, especially if we were to ask for an increase somewhere along the lines. If we find out that things are not sustainable, I just think it might be good information that maybe residents aren't exactly aware of.
Any other feelings on the benchmarking questions? Thank you. So we're open to them, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
well, sorry.
So the instructions are pick out a half dozen to, 6 to 10 and send it to committee of the whole and say, hey, here's the ones that I like. Is that the direction?
Well, I
here?
think a lot depends on the question formulation for the rest of the survey, and if there's only 30, 35 questions, then 30, then how many? If you have the other ones you like more and these less, we'll have to. I'd keep a deeper bench and just see who you cut. I don't know. Use a sports analogy.
Yeah, my biggest ones are around the roads and public safety. So, yeah, that's great. And the library.
Cool. On to the next question. Everyone good?
So the final two questions talk about if we want them to be to revolve around policy issues, customer satisfaction, or a combination thereof. So we did include some of the questions from the 2019 survey. So numbers 11 and 12 are policy questions, and then about open space preservation. And then number 17 is an example of a customer satisfaction question. So we pose this to you if we want to go with policy issues, customer satisfaction, or a combination.
Alderwoman Tlaco.
Just thinking about Mequon and who we are, we're known for low taxes, preserving land. So like some of these like currently protected, land in the city open spaces, that's something that is in our zoning and development that I don't feel like needs to be a question. It is our standard. It is like what separates us from other communities, where I don't feel that that is a pertinent question as far as asking our residents, because I feel like that's an expectation or guarantee when you're going to live in Mequon, that we're going to do a good job doing that. And if that's not what you're looking for, then maybe this isn't where you want to live then. As far as satisfaction, echoing Alderman Gebhardt, I think it is really important. I want to hear feedback. What are we doing really well? What areas are they feeling like we're not providing enough or doing enough? And then that would really help us gauge policies and procedures to stream down the line. We want to make sure that the point of the survey for me, of why I'm like, I want the survey, is I want to make sure that I am echoing the sentiments of my constituents, and why I don't get to talk to each and every one of them. I want to make sure that I am their voice, and this is my opportunity then to hear that voice and be able to further that, because that is my job. So again, just to reiterate, like the satisfaction, seeing how we're doing, and then gauging, as Alderman Strelchak said, about getting a pulse of like, do you guys want more of the downtown center, or was that enough for you? Like, where should we take our development? And then, as Mayor Nurburg said about like gauging an industrial park out in the west part of Mequon, those are questions that I'm looking for to really understand where we need to like be focused on.
So a little of each. But from the discussion so far, I'm hearing a slight preference for more of the customer satisfaction piece, but I don't know if we can totally evade some of the more policy-centric questions either. But is that generally where people's heads are at? A little more lean towards customer satisfaction, but don't miss an opportunity to ask questions on some big upcoming policy issues. The last one was very, very policy-centric. So we can skew it a little bit, but just maybe not totally go away from it. That sound good?
That sounds good. So thank you.
We'll have many more meetings to
Yes.
define what that actually means.
Well, the Public Welfare Committee will take this feedback back, and they'll be working on questions for the remainder of the year. So feel free to come to any of those meetings if you would like to share more input. Thank you for your time tonight.
Alderman Strelchak.
Is
Yeah.
there better engagement on one type of questioning versus another? We're at 40% and up for response rates, which is outstanding. I think the reason for some of that is people really feel like they have a voice, right, through the community survey. And they've heard us talk multiple times after the survey results came in about what their voice meant, what the percentages were, and the analysis based on the feedback that was received. So I guess my line of questioning for you, yes, a hybrid obviously sounds like it's the pulse of the council, but enough meat on the bones, from a policy standpoint, to where people, feel like they're sharing sharing their opinions and their voices being heard and it's being analyzed, right? I do want to reiterate parks, and if there's anything where we can ask about specific amenities, just an easy something, you know, like I know pickleball was a huge one, and people wanted that up, and it's been a year and a half since that original discussion started, and that's moving a little slower, I think, than what some residents were hoping to see. So, you know, can we drive a little park funding from that?
Excellent. Any last parting feedback? Otherwise, there will be, maybe we'll see increased participation in public welfare meetings this upcoming year. I think I can see the future on that one. Having been through a couple of surveys, there ended up being some pretty interesting discussions. You got what you need, Carrie and Justin?
Yes,
Okay.
and we'll be back in the first quarter once the survey instrument is done for your approval.
Perfect. Next up, we have a quick discussion on Committee of the Whole planning calendar. Any questions on the calendar coming up or suggestions for new topics? If there aren't any now, we can always get to them another time. We got one, Alderman Brett.
Sorry, Mayor. The only question I would have, I see we have a future topic, bike and pedestrian way master plan. I would only encourage that we have it sooner rather than later, just because we're going to be adopting, or the Bikeway Commission will be adopting that at some point in December, if I'm right. So maybe it'd be good we have it at sometime October, November.
I don't have it up in front of me. What do? Pardon, Kristen? Yeah, we don't have the report yet. I didn't see when it was scheduled, and I don't have it up in front of me.
It's a future item, so
Oh,
we
it's
don't
a
have it on
future
the
item.
calendar.
So yeah, I think that probably will get. I'm guessing it'll get introduced here before it goes for final adoption, but we don't have the report yet. Okay, noted. We'll try and
Thank
make
you.
that happen. Excellent. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we're adjourned, and we'll immediately reconvene as the Mequon Municipal Water Utility Commission. And we can let the record show that everyone that was here for Committee of the Whole is also here for the Water Utility Commission meeting. First up, we have approval of the minutes from May 14th.
Move approval.
Motion and a second. Is there any comments or discussion on those minutes? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Next up, we have a couple of discussion items and possible action. First is authorization to purchase 350 water meters and associated appurtenances. I love it when Will uses those words. In a not to exceed amount of $120,000. I think Jim will give us a quick overview. Some of us don't know about the water meter replacement program, so maybe a little introduction to that, and then we'll take up this matter.
Sure. Good. Stays on. The Public Service Commission requires all water utilities to either test or replace water meters on a standard schedule. The water meters that are typically installed in residential homes are 1 inch and smaller, so 1 inch 3/4 and 5/8. And those are the utility replaces on a 20-year schedule. So when we first got started, for the first 20 years, we didn't have to replace any meters. But starting back in 2019 or 2018, we got to the age where the meters were 20 years old. So we started a replacement program. And we did a study to look at how many we should replace on an annual basis. And the chart is in there for everyone to take a peek at. So the goal is to get those meters replaced, as they age. Normally, we do this request for the meter purchase or this authorization for the meter purchase as part of budget. But there were two issues that kind of pushed this forward. One was, it's a good issue. We actually have a lot of development going on right now. There's the development of the Grove in River Hills. There's also the townhomes for Foxtown, which are building rapidly. And then there's more townhomes in Thiensville, and now with the development of Swan Ridge, there's just anticipation of a lot of homes completing and then needing meters for installation in those homes. And that's new installation, not replacements. And that's the inventory side of this order. The other issue is the time that it takes to receive these. Ever since about 4 years ago, it's hard to get computer chips, and those computer chips are what are in the radios. And that pushes the date out on those radios to 6 months plus. Last year, we ordered all of our meters from this program in November, right after budget was complete, and we just received all of the products so we could start swapping out meters last month. So that gives you an idea of our timeline. So the thought process was, with all of this inventory, all of these new construction, and trying to get meters early enough so that we can start swapping in like spring instead of fall, the thought is to get approval now, and then obviously the money would be a part of the budget, but we could at least put in a verbal order with the manufacturers to get the ball rolling so that we get in the queue. Because I checked with the radio manufacturer, and they told me that if we had ordered them 2 weeks ago, they would have come the week between Christmas and New Year's. So we won't receive these until after the first of the year if we were to order them tomorrow. So that's just a quick history.
I'll turn my mic back on. Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Or a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And those items are approved. Next up, we have a policy discussion related to the amortization of depreciation costs for private water trusts. And is Kristen going to walk us through the discussion?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
As noted in the memo, we've recently had some inquiries from private water trusts about connection requirements. Luckily, this commission did a large amount of work a little over 2 years ago to create a water connection policy that otherwise outlines for the majority of connections, including those private water trusts, in terms of those terms of connection. For those that were involved in that process, you may recall that that includes the consideration of depreciated costs for existing private water trusts. Normally, when we accept new development through the build and contribute process, the materials that were otherwise used are brand new. So when the infrastructure is dedicated to the utility, there isn't an immediate impact to the utility ratepayers for the future replacement of them, and the revenue from those customers is what contributes towards its eventual future replacement. In the case of private water trusts, those systems have already depreciated and therefore will require replacement sooner than a brand new system would. And in recognition of that, the water connection policy requires a depreciation payment to the water utility that essentially is that down payment for the future replacement cost to offset any cost to existing ratepayers for the acceptance of that system. As some of those private water trusts are completing the analysis as to whether it's in the best interest for their customers to privately fund or fund through the private water trust the infrastructure improvements required, or whether it would be better to consider the connection to the Mequon water utility, one of the largest issues they're facing is they haven't already amassed sufficient capital funds to do either pay for the infrastructure upgrades that are otherwise required to maintain the private system, or to pay the Mequon water utility the depreciation costs. On the private side, they're also finding difficulty getting lending. It's kind of an unusual situation with a private water trust for them to get lending for the money they would need it, and therefore their only option is to charge the residents rather substantial capital costs for the infrastructure. Therefore, they reached out to the Mequon water utility to question whether or not we would consider amortizing the depreciation costs. So in other words, rather than collecting the full amount up front, if we would collect it over time. As noted, again, there's not an immediate cost to the Mequon water utility for connection. Those connection costs, at least for policy discussion purposes, would still be borne 100% by those private water trusts. This would really just allow for a payment over time of that depreciation cost. It would also allow the Mequon water utility to receive revenue from those customers sooner than presumably would be allowed if they had to seek other means or take years to save the money themselves before they depreciated it. So we're otherwise looking just for policy direction at this point, whether the commission would be willing to consider language. I did provide, simply as a reference, some of the special assessment language that was utilized for the most recent sanitary sewer project, just as an example, so that if policy was favorably received, that you could see some of the terms and provide staff with guidance. And if received positively, we would come back at a future meeting with an amendment to the water connection policy for consideration of adoption.
Define what a private water trust is. Who do they serve? How many are there? Because I wasn't here 2 years ago, so I need a little background on what they are.
Sure. Prior to the city of Mequon owning and operating a Mequon water utility, many subdivisions had their own private water trusts. So typically set up where they have a well and infrastructure to otherwise distribute the water to their customers. They charge them for both the water and operation and maintenance, but most didn't ultimately plan for capital costs, whether that's service lateral replacement or water main breaks, or what they're seeing now is more issues with their well, be that failure of the pump or some of the requirements for backup power and other things. And so the number Jim would have to speak to and probably divide between Mequon and Thiensville, because there are private water trusts in both.
Yep. I live in a private water trust, so Beechwood Farms has roughly 103 people, all served by a common well. So it's got all the distribution hardware in the ground. There's fire hydrants, the whole 9 yards, although the fire department would be reluctant to hook up to them because the peak flow isn't probably what they need.
And Beechwood Farms is actually
No, they have a certified guy come test the well every year. There's requirements from DNR for all of that. So
they are regulated just like the public water
or
utility is
each
for
of
them.
those is their own little water utility.
Yes.
But as Kristen points out, they seldom, and that is certainly true in Beechwood Farms, they seldom save enough money to fund ongoing maintenance. So one of the surprises I got when I bought my house there was that there was a special assessment that the owner didn't tell me about, that I found out about on closing day. So surprise, you owe another $5,000 over time. So that was an attempt that $5,000 was for lateral replacement because the laterals were starting to fail. And they've replaced a few, but they've stopped replacing them. It's a whole phenomenon. And if you have a single home with your own well, you've never experienced it before, but there's a few of these around Mequon and Thiensville. And more they're realizing they're not well equipped to operate their own water utility because it's run by an HOA with people that do it on an even more part-time basis than we do as elected officials. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Can I just, like in Huntington Park, we have our own, and so for 30 years our water bill was $60. Well, this last year was up to $135 a quarter because to collect money in case down the road we're going to need it, because we, it was pretty reasonable for $60 a quarter. So now it's, more than double what it was last year for future maintenance.
And to answer your question, Greg, when I first started with We Energies at the water utility in 2001, there were about 40 water trusts or OTMs, other than municipal OTMs is the way that DNR refers to them. Now there's probably about 18 left. So they kind of slowly connected to the water utility as the water utility, got close.
Some of those have already connected.
Oh yeah, I would say the majority of them have, but there's still like about 18 of them that are left.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alderman Parrish.
Do you want to go first? Okay.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Welcome
Saw you
back,
first, so you got called
Commissioner
first.
Voigt. To answer the questions at hand, yes, I absolutely support the recommendation for depreciating new or older wells coming onto our system, provided that that's secured by the tax bill. And assuming it is, I view it as a very safe policy, so to speak. It also assumes that the depreciation costs can be accurately calculated. I have no idea how you would do that. I assume you have some engineers that will come in and give the water utility an accurate basis for that.
That part's already defined. The determination of the depreciation cost is already included in the water connection
But
policy.
who goes in the ground and sees what the condition of the pipes are and what system we're really taking on to know that
Correct.
it's
There's
Yeah,
there's a condition
The
assessment study that's
condition
required.
assessment done.
Okay.
When we created that policy not that long ago.
okay.
So yeah, you assess what's there, and you have all the engineering drawings from how it was
Right.
built, and then you go and assess the health of the system, and it all goes into a big spreadsheet, and a number pops out at the end.
If my colleagues would humor me just for 2 more minutes, if this was an interesting conversation, and I thought the write-up was good because you have a couple of interesting topics buried in there. First of all, I really like this new policy because it could obviously encourage more of these private water trusts to come on board, and with a return on investment of over 10% per hookup, so to speak, it makes somewhat good financial sense from the return on investment perspective. I really appreciated your point about how bringing on these older homes that were before the water agreement would actually benefit the 80-20 water agreement rule because it would water down the base, so to speak. So by getting as many of these older homes that were pre-existing before 70 or 80, whoa,
98.
I'm off. Okay. So before that date, if we can get as many of those on the system, I really think it's to the benefit of the overall system. It will help with our negotiations with our city attorney is, I believe, working on a contract amendment, which is on his task list, and so we're working on that. I do believe that doing more connections all at once is way more efficient than kind of plucking off one group at a time. And so if we are going to go down this path, we did talk about this during the strategic planning, is do we want to market our services to, on main, not using? Do we want to be more proactive and market those services to on main, not using, because there's such a high return and low cost to hook them up? So that seems to be, are these water trusts on main?
Some are not.
Okay.
It depends on the trust.
Okay. And certainly as you're digging pipe and tearing up roads, it would probably make sense to do a bunch of these private water trusts near each other so you can get efficiencies with road tear-ups and pipes and so on. So I guess I'm envisioning some kind of program moving forward where if we are going to do this, let's get as many doing it. And the final benefit I see is it gets more people off wells, which improves the well capacity for the people on wells, which is so important to all of us on council. So there's a lot of benefits to this, and I appreciate staff's creative approach and letting us know about it.
And several of those that you mentioned, just to reiterate for those that may not have been here at the time, are included in the water master plan to ensure that there is proactive education for those on main not using customers of the opportunity to connect. Certainly if there are any of these private water trusts that connect, we can work through the agreement if there are other homes adjacent to the private water trust that would make sense to connect at the same time. And the mayor happens to live in a private water trust that is interconnected with up to 3 other private water trusts. So there can be scaling involved as well if one of them wanted to be able to talk to the adjacent ones as well. That's not the only one that there's some interconnect, but
The biggest impediment is getting multiple HOA boards to all agree all at the same time.
and we have talked about kind of the idea of a town hall meeting, so to speak, to be able to educate people on these opportunities and both the policies we already have in place, and this happened to be a question of one of the I don't know her title, but of the managers of her water trust in looking for what she could offer to otherwise potentially appease the concerns of the residents in connection. And so it was actually her request that brought this forward so that it could be another offer to the residents to help with the cost to connect.
And I can tell you in the entire time that I've worked for the utility for both We Energies and for the city, that is always the question I always get asked. Is there any way that the utility can finance this? That's every single time I get that question. So just letting you know that.
Well,
there's
we wouldn't be financing it, but we would be spreading the capital outlay out over multiple years. So
Yes.
yeah, it takes maybe a $10,000 bill and makes it a $2,000 bill for 5 years.
It-
Spreads it out with
that's-
interest.
A note to just reiterate, unlike special assessments where there is a cost that then we are literally assessing to the benefiting properties, the depreciation cost is not a direct cost. There is not an outlay of funds to the Mequon utility. It's the buy down of the future cost for the replacement of the system. So in this case, there's an amount of financial risk that obviously if something happened to the utility within that time frame, we wouldn't have collected the full depreciation cost up front. But outside of that risk, it's relatively low risk to the utility because we're just collecting the money over time instead of all up
Well,
front.
and we're in a much stronger financial position than
Yes.
we were a decade ago.
Yes.
So there's more capital in the bank if something bad happens. And I mean, this might not have even been something we could consider talking about
I
10
think
years
Jim
ago.
and I would tell you it was not something we could have considered. So
Yeah, our appetite for any risk at all on
Yes.
any measure was about zero because it was very touch and go. But we're doing well now because we've added so many customers. So no policy decision tonight, just a
Correct.
directive to work on policy to bring back later. One more question from Alderman Pratt.
Not really a question, more a comment. Appreciate you bringing this forward. I have had residents in District 7 come forward and express, how hard of a mountain it is to get over that big upfront payment. So I think this would work well. With other water districts in the state, I've not heard of any issues with this sort of model, like deferred payments. So I'm not worried about it for our district. So yeah, I think public information is important. I think, as Brian said, there's a lot of benefits. So maybe even an open house when we roll this out, just be great. Thank you.
So show of hands, who's in favor of seeing a policy come back to make this possible? Okay. There you go. Now you
thank you.
know.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll look forward to taking up this topic. I'm not sure when, but I'm guessing
As soon as we can get it done.
sometime after budget.
Or maybe with budget if
Okay,
we can
well,
get
okay.
it. But yeah.
The challenge has been thrown
With
down.
utility budget, I should say, not general
Okay,
levy
that
budget, but
does lag a
utility.
couple of weeks.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. We're at the end of our water utility meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Why don't we take a short break if anyone needs to get a drink of water or use the facilities, and we'll come back around 8:02.
Other people have done that as well and stuff that they want to do.
Figuring. I hate using it, just it may as well be a little funny. It just seems. Yeah, yeah. All right, we're going to reconvene now as the Common Council, call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak,
Here.
Alderman Talaco, Alderman Meyer, Alderman Hancher,
Here.
Alderman Bach,
Here.
Alderman Parrish,
Here.
Alderman Bratt,
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Here.
and Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, we have a public hearing for ordinance 2024-1667, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Mequon Municipal Code related to WDNR MS4 stormwater permit conditions. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on July 22nd, recommended by the Public Works Committee on August 14th, and was a first reading last month at the Common Council, also on August 14th. Is there a motion to go into public hearing?
Move to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of going into public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in public hearing. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak on the MS4 stormwater permitting? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Move to close.
Motion and a second. Second. All those in favor of closing, please say aye.
Aye.
We are back in our regular session. We'll now consider this ordinance. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions on the proposed ordinance? Alderman Strelchak.
Yeah, I had a question for Kristen, if she could come up to the mic. I told you it was coming. So,
Go ahead.
being in an HOA with 11 homes, the pond recertification gets to be a little burdensome every 5 years, and my question for you is who regulated the every 5 years? And then if so, is there another opportunity for maybe something that would cover the concern of the pond integrity, but not require maybe somebody with as high of expertise as an engineer to certify that, you know, there's no blockage, that nothing's really majorly changed, or go to maybe just a policy where every 10 years it's a major recertification, every 5 we had something that might be a little less burdensome on the residents. This was also to highlight beyond just my subdivision. When we went through this, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, when this came back up, a couple people hadn't been doing it in a while, and there were tons of questions that were revolving around this. So it wasn't just my neighborhood that had questions, it was others as well. So this will be a good question for them.
The DNR requires that it be done every 5 years or every permit term. So that is a DNR regulation that is otherwise required. And they do already consider that. I mean, annually it should be inspected. So, you know, that is kind of the lesser one that doesn't have to be done by an engineer. Most stormwater management plans require an annual inspection at a minimum, and only require that to be done by a engineer or professional land surveyor every 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Another unfunded mandate from the state.
And I will just notice, kind of parallel to the conversation we just had about private water trusts, part of the reason that it's required every 5 years is so that the HOA can plan, because there will be a point at which there are very expensive improvements that need to be done if they don't otherwise keep up. So it is partly in protection of the HOAs to make sure that they see what's coming and they do keep up on things as they move along, so that they don't have the sudden large capital cost to otherwise repair, remediate, or address it not meeting the city's stormwater regulations.
In the not so distant past, there was a HOA that shall remain nameless that needed to do a bunch of dredging. That was a surprise that maybe shouldn't have been a surprise, but.
And to speak to the last part, we have significantly changed our process to make everyone aware of what the requirements are. Unfortunately, we ran into a scenario where a lot of developers had either gone defunct or otherwise gone under, and so the transition to HOAs were a messy one, and none of them were prepared for that initial certification. But knock on wood, we've gone through enough iterations now that that's really not the problem anymore. And we do work with those that find they are non-compliant to give them time to bring them into compliance, but we don't generally have the issues with not certifying like we did in the past.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney.
Also having had the benefit of beforehand, I did take a look, Alderman Strelchak. The 5-year requirement is not something that I can find expressly laid out in the statutes or administrative code. Instead, what the administrative code just generally says is that the department has to create these permits, and one of the requirements of the permits is to establish an inspection and process to ensure that they continue to work. But it's very vague beyond that. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room other than our permit just says you have to inspect these once per permit term. Our permit term is 5 years, and that's where it comes from. The other thing I would remind you is that in most cases, in fact, I hope all cases, certainly all new development, we have stormwater maintenance easements in place and maintenance agreements in place that require the 5 years as well. So even if we change the code, the maintenance agreement would likewise still have that same requirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we have a motion and a second. There are no more questions. We'll call the question here. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that ordinance is adopted. Next on to personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you desire to be heard on agenda items, You may be heard when that item is considered on the agenda. Please speak into the microphone at the podium. The time limit is 5 minutes. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to speak? I think we have one speaker registered for an item that's not on the agenda. Lori O'Brien Wolf from 7717 North Boyd Way in Fox Point, Wisconsin, and wishes to speak. Please come forward.
Thank you so much. Nice to see all of you tonight. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Lori O'Brien Wolf. I am the Republican candidate for the 23rd Assembly District, and just wanted to let you know what's going on with me. I was raised in Thiensville. I'm the youngest of 9 kids. My dad was an iron worker, and he literally did backbreaking work to make sure we were able to be raised in this great community. And I bring that up because I've been knocking doors in Thiensville and knocked a door of a high school classmate, and he lives down the road from where I grew up, and pointed to the house next door where someone had bought it and flipped it, and the house recently sold for like $400,000, and it was similar to the size of the house I grew up in, which was like a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm running for the assembly seat, is because I fear that that American dream is getting further and further out of reach for our children and grandchildren. And I know you were talking about the Mequon pool earlier. I learned how to swim at the Mequon pool. I grew up going to the Weinberg Library, and so they're wonderful resources for the community. And my priority will be, if I'm elected, the physical, mental, and financial health of our children and grandchildren. I mean, we all say that we want to leave a better future for our kids than what we had, and I think we're going in the wrong direction. But if I'm elected, I look forward to working with all of you and having an open door and allowing you access to the majority caucus in the assembly. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening who wishes to speak on any item not on the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to public officials' reports. I have one proclamation for Rail Safety Week, and so I'll get that out of the way. City of Mequon mayoral proclamation for National C-Tracks Think Train Week. 2,192 rail grade crossing collisions resulted in 765 personal injuries and were responsible for 248 fatalities in the United States during 2023. 1,378 trespassing casualties have occurred in the United States, resulting in 663 pedestrians being killed and another 715 injured while trespassing on railroad property rights-of-way during 2023. Educating and informing the public about rail safety, reminding the public that railroad rights-of-way are private property, enhancing public awareness of the dangers associated with railway grade crossings, ensuring pedestrians and motorists are looking and listening while near railways, and obeying established traffic laws will reduce the number of avoidable fatalities and injuries caused by incidents involving trains and citizens. The International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Operation Lifesaver, United States Department of Transportation, and all local, state, county, and railroad law enforcement officers, first responders, and railroad corporations commit to partnering together in an effort to educate at a national level all aspects of railroad safety, to enforce applicable laws, and support National C-Tracks Think Train Week. Accordingly, I, Andy Nurbin, Mayor of the City of Mequon, on behalf of all citizens of the city, proclaim September 23rd to 29th, 2024 to be National C-Tracks Think Train Week, and I encourage all citizens to recognize the importance of rail safety education. In addition to that, I'd just like to thank everyone who came out to Taste of Mequon here over the weekend, just out in front of City Hall here. We had one of our better bands ever. The weather was fantastic, and a good time was had by all. So if I missed you there, I'm sorry. Hopefully I'll catch you next year. And Our city administrator is not with us tonight. He's ill, but we have our assistant administrator. And Justin, do you have any announcements to make?
Nothing to add tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. We have 10 sets of boards and commission minutes or various other public reports. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And the consent agenda is approved. We have no ordinances this evening. We have, however, have 5 resolutions to consider. The first is Resolution 4137, a resolution approving the First Amendment to a license agreement for the location of equipment upon the cellular tower located at 11300 North Buntrock Avenue with Sprintcom LLC of Overland Park, Kansas. This was recommended earlier this evening by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the cell phone contract renewal? Hearing and seeing none. It's monetary, so let's please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Talaco,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
and Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
And that resolution is adopted. Moving on to Resolution 4138, a resolution approving an amendment for completion of a citywide community survey with ETC Institute of Olathe, Kansas, in the amount of $23,850. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Works this evening.
Mayor and Common Council, Resolution 4138 was discussed and voted on at Public Welfare. It was approved, and such I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the survey? We talked about it a little bit at Committee of the Wholes. If there's any other questions, we can get them out now. Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Talaco,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Aye.
and Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
And that resolution is also adopted. Moving on, Resolution 4139, a resolution amending Resolution number 4026, approving a state municipal financial agreement and authorizing a state municipal maintenance agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation in connection with the installation of a sidewalk on Mequon Road between Wauwatosa and Swan Roads. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
Public Works approved of that, so I make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? May recall we voted on this about a year ago, but we had to hold off on the SMMA portion because of some unfavorable terms buried in the terms and conditions that was caught between our city engineer and attorney that would have left us on the hook for all the state's drainage problems. So good catch, and glad we were able to get that ironed out and taken out of the SMMA. Now we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer, Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
and Alderman Talaco.
Aye.
That too is adopted. On to Resolution 4140, a resolution approving a state municipal agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for installation of a sidewalk on Wauwatosa Road between Mequon and Donjas Bay Roads. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
Public Works approved of this, so I move the motion 4140.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any questions related to this item? Hearing, just to clarify for the public, there are sections of sidewalk there. Now we'll just be completing all of them so they actually connect all the way from Mequon Road to Donjas Bay Road. Be a nice benefit for the public who is trying to walk on them today. If there are no further comments or questions, Alderman Meyer.
I just want to say that there are a number of people that had contacted me in the past about getting that connection done so that they can have a walking path that goes straight down to the Civic Center, and it goes straight down over to the public market and all those areas over the airport. And so it was kind of pish-posh and trying to get over there for them. So there'll be a few people that'll be happy when this passes.
Agreed. Any other comments on this item? If not, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Talaco,
Aye.
and Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And finally, Resolution 4141, a resolution approving an amended memorandum of understanding between the City of Mequon and the Village of Brown Deer, authorizing the inclusion of construction layout services for a joint county line road improvement project to increase the total costs in the amount of $11,900. Recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
It was approved, and I would move the motion 4141.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions from the council on this item? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Talaco,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
and Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
That too is adopted. No, we have no specified unfinished business from prior meetings, no specified new business. We do have one potential closed session item, a public safety building and pool site analysis for possible uses and/or acquisition of sites, including 11015 North Market Street. The Common Council may convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Prin 1, Prin E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such actions as it deems appropriate. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Bratt,
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Talaco,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer, Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Bach,
Aye.
and Mayor Nervin.
Aye. We will now convene into closed session, and I do not believe we will be coming back into open session, so I'll say goodnight to the audience at home.